It's now 6 p.m. Our regular City Council meeting for November 10th, 2020 is now in session. First on the agenda, it is my privilege to lead us with the opening prayer and to pledge allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. First, I'd like to say that we lost a great person this past weekend, Mark Welch. Mark Welch was a constant part of our City Council meeting. Mark always took place right back here behind the window, and we are sure going to miss him. So if you please indulge me in a few seconds of silence on his behalf. Lord, let our nation start the healing process. Lord, give us confidence with the power of your grace. Show us mercy. Relieve our fears and anxiety and grant us a quiet mind. Lord, lift us up with your blessing today, and we pray that you will give us the strength and self-care today, tomorrow, and always. We pray that you grace us with your patience and wisdom. We pray that you will encourage us throughout the day to take the correct steps. We pray all these in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Guests, we would, if you please continue to wear your face mask, your mask. You may remove your mask when you're speaking at the podium, but once you conclude, we respectfully ask that you place your face mask back on. I'd like to also, we have a couple of distinguished guests. Commissioner-elect Michael Carpenter. And City Council-elect Jill Whitaker. Thank you for joining us today. We'll move straight into the agenda today. First on the agenda is the hearing of residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the City Council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the Council. For the record, please state your name and address. First on the list is Maggie Titterington. Was that right on?
That was good.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just a couple of things. I'll be brief. Tomorrow is our Veterans Ceremony at Veterans Plaza in Schertz. It will begin at 9 a.m. We will also be Facebooking it live since we are doing the social distancing and there will be limited seating. And we do realize that there are quite a few of those that are a little bit more at risk than others that do want to attend and be a part of it. We have Brigadier General Carolyn Miller, who will be our keynote speaker, as well as Representative Kemple and Senator Campbell also taking part of the ceremony. Also, just wanted to take a brief moment. You all do not get to hear this enough about how awesome the staff is that helps our businesses in Schertz. And we have the Stars Complex right off of 35. They are utilizing, it's Danny and Rebecca Rios, they're utilizing one of the old Garden Ridge buildings. And they have this really great idea of expanding to be able to use it as a sports complex where there's going to be professional cheer and tournaments and wrestling, as well as a baseball pitching and league training center within it. And I believe there's going to be a couple of other things added like karate. But the whole main goal is to be able to get this facility the way that it needs to be with the fire and the lanes and everything that it needs to be. And so so there was just a little bit of just hard bumps and challenges for them, and you had people like Mr. James and Mr. Kelm and Suzanne and Gil and all these people gathered together, and we all got to meet with them and all the different aspects of the people that want to be a part of this venture to work out all the kinks. And it was time out of the day. It was, you know, it took very little effort, but it was time, and it was the consideration that the staff had to do this, to me, to go through the worries and to make out a plan, and it was just so appreciative. And these are the things that the Chamber's been working with the city and the staff these past few years to do that, and I just wanted to make sure that I commend them and thank them, Mr. James and the departments, our city manager, Mark Brown, who also encourages the staff to do this. But it was such a great meeting, and they're so encouraged, and in the next few months we should see this more fruits from the labor, as well as I'm looking at about a year out of having some heads in beds and being able to utilize even more services within the city of Schertz. So thank you very much.
Okay. Ms. Dennis, just to make clear, I have 2 names that were scratched out. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Next is Brent Bolter.
Brent Bolter, 2633 Cloverbrook Lane. Council, Mayor, City Manager. I've been before this body many times, speaking on various things. And sometimes I've come in here with prepared remarks, and sometimes I haven't. Tonight, I didn't want to come in here with prepared remarks. I wanted to speak more from the heart. So I saw on the Schertz Police Department website video that gave me pause, and I thought long and hard about it. And I want to preface my remarks by saying my sister was a LAPD officer until she was medically unable to continue, and she continues to work administratively for LAPD. I've got a good friend that's in Live Oak PD, and I've got many friends that I went to high school with that were cops or sheriffs and have now retired. So I just want to say that. So I'm not seen as somebody who's out bashing cops or anything like that. But the situation with Mr. Rayford on the 2nd of November, as I watched that video play out, let me up front say that, yes, should he have pulled over when Schertz PD put the lights on after he ran through the stoplight? Yes. Should he have obeyed the commands of the officers? Yes. But as I watched that video played out, a couple things struck me. Number one was the amount of force necessary in the situation. And then 2, training dictates that you try to, in those situations, de-escalate a situation, not escalate a situation. Now, in America, we've all seen different things play out, different videos, and things go on that at least speak to me that a African American in the United States, especially a male between certain ages, might seem to have some concerns when the police are pulling them over. And fathers have discussions with their sons, and mothers have discussions with their sons on how to approach those situations that many other parents don't have to have. So as I saw this play out, the father comes to the door, and there's discussion, and then at one point the officer tells the father to basically shut it down or you're next. And to me, that was an escalation of a situation that was already tense. So I'm coming before this body tonight to say, going forward, and I've already seen the police department say they're doing an investigation, is that be very open, that everything is fully put out there, so there's no concept that anything's being hidden, swept under the rug, that it's fully addressed. I mean, let the investigation speak for itself, and they'll determine if lines were crossed or protocols were followed. But this is something I never thought I would see come to the city of Schertz, and that disturbed me. So I wanted to come before you tonight, and it's been a long time since I've been in these chambers, and just speak to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I thought, it's important to mention that council is not permitted to discuss or comment during the hearing of residents or any topic brought up during the hearing of residents, since these items were not posted on the agenda. I did prepare a statement that I'd like to read for you. No, that was the last speaker. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate and value your presence and concerns. It is regrettable our city is enduring this situation. However, when laws are broken, we turn to our law enforcement to restore order and protect our community. For without laws, there is no order. The presumption of innocence applies to all, and decisions should be based on facts and not emotions. We live in a diverse community. Everyone has a right to have their different viewpoint and different opinion. We acknowledge the anxiety that perplexes you. We acknowledge the despair that frightens you. We acknowledge your concerns, and we understand why you feel this way. Together, we must start the healing process. One of our city's strongest cores is to do the right thing. We are painfully enduring a complex, delicate, and fragile matter. We ask for everyone's patience as we move through the process. Next, our announcements and recognitions by our city manager, Dr. Brown.
I have no announcements tonight, Mayor.
Announcements of upcoming city events. Ms. Gonzalez.
I've got it tonight,
Okay.
Mayor.
Mr. Kell.
Tomorrow, November 11th, the Community Veterans Day ceremony begins at 9 a.m. at Veterans Memorial Plaza on the Parkway. City offices are closed tomorrow. On Saturday, November 14th, the Discover Nature Journaling at Crescent Bend Nature Park is at 10 o'clock. This event is the last of the 2020 Nature Discovery Series. Pre-registration is required by calling 210-619-1850. On Monday, November 16th, we have a special city council meeting at 6 p.m. to canvass the results of the November 3rd, 2020 Schertz general election and swearing-in ceremonies. On Wednesday, November 18th, at the Bluebonnet Palace at 6 p.m. in Selma, the Tri-County Chamber of Commerce is hosting their annual elected officials reception, free event for all elected officials. On Thursday, November 26th and Friday, November 27th, city offices are closed for the Thanksgiving holiday. On November 28th, Saturday, there's a star party at Crescent Bend Nature Park from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Please come out for a chance to view the stars. The San Antonio Astronomical Association is providing telescopes. And if you have a red infrared flashlight, you can make your own. On Tuesday, December 1st, we have our next regular city council meeting at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. And that is all for tonight.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kell. We'll continue with consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, the approval of the minutes of our regular meeting on October 22nd, 2020. Item number 2, resolution number 20R109, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the YMCA Greater San Antonio to operate the Schertz Area Senior Center and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 3, resolution number 20R132, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving a request for a Schertz Main Street Local Flavor Economic Development Grant for 537 Main Street in the City of Schertz, Texas, and related matters in connection therewith. Item number 4, resolution number 20R113, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing expenditures not to exceed $81,888.13 with C3 Environmental Incorporated for Ashley Park Sidewalk Project and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 5, cancellation of December 22nd, 2020 City Council meeting. Item number 6, resolution number 20R115, A resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing an economic development performance agreement between the City of Schertz Economic Development Corporation and Feline Bennett LLC and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 7, resolution number 20R131. A resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Cibolo Creek Municipal Authority for the lease of real property for the operations and maintenance of a wastewater lift station facility. Item number 8, ordinance number 20M34. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the City Code of Ordinances, Article 1, in general, Section 2-125, the designation of Records Management Officer, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing an effective date. This is also our final reading. And item number 9, ordinance number 20S33. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning approximately 204 acres of land from General Business District and Manufacturing Light District to Planned Development District located southwest of Greytown Road, stretching between the Interstate Highway 10 and Boeing Drive, City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas, also known as Bexar County Property Identification Numbers 619-201 and 619-202. This is also our final reading. Council, do any of these need to be removed for separate discussion? Yes.
I'd like to discuss number 2.
Okay, we're pulling number 2. By Mayor Pro Tem Scott. Any others, Council? If not, do I have a motion to approve consent agendas items 1 and 3 through 9?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Hayward. Do I have a second?
So moved. Second.
Second by Councilmember Dalla. Council, any other comments, questions? Okay, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
We have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right, let's move back to item number 2. Okay, discussion item number 2, resolution number 20R109. A resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into agreement with the YMCA Greater San Antonio to operate the Schertz Area Senior Center and other matters in connection therewith. Ms. Strum, you have the floor.
Good evening.
Good evening. And so when I was looking through this, I saw that the proposed monthly fee is $13,353 per month. My question for you is, was there a RFP?
Correct, yes, there was an RFP process that we went through.
Okay, how many companies bid on that?
The YMCA was a sole respondent.
Oh, really? Okay, were they the only, I'm just asking opinion, I don't know if you have the answer. Were they the only ones capable of doing that, or the only ones who expressed interest, or why were they the, if you could guess, why would you say that?
Yeah, there's not many people in the business of senior centers. There's nonprofit foundations like the Como County Senior Citizen Foundation. They're very localized. And then the YMCA is more regional, so they just have more reach. They have more centers and different agencies that they work with, so.
Okay. And then over the past 5 years, the center has grown in popularity, growing from 399 members in 2015 to 1,756 in 2019. That's some substantial, that's significant growth. That's a lot.
That's correct, yeah. The YMCA started with not much. You know, we had 20 programs or so when the city operated it, and they've expanded membership and done a really great job doing what they do, which is recreation programming, so.
Oh my gosh, when I read all the things that we're offering the seniors, my heart was just racing like, wow, whenever I get old enough, I'm gonna do all that stuff. Like when I retire, I'm in. I saw that we, like the $5 casino trips, and I mean, we really take care of our seniors. Are we doing, Are we doing the lunches still?
We are still doing the senior nutrition program, yes. We're doing it through a drive-by basis right now, so they're going to the parking lot, driving in and getting their meal.
Okay, and my question, the cinch, I guess, are we paying for, I saw that we have some funding from government agencies and all that. Are we still talking about Cibolo paying for some of this? Is this still on the table? Are we paying the lion's share for all the seniors?
We are at this point, yeah, and it's still on the table to talk to other cities. We also are going to have a workshop in December 1st, I believe, with council on membership rates, revisiting the topic of non-resident rates and what we want the membership rate to be. When we went out with the RFP, we restructured the agreement. We're now collecting membership fees with this agreement. Previously, the membership fees went to the YMCA.
Okay, and are there, Mayor, if we vote for this, I know it's on the table for a vote, would this preempt us from revisiting the fees or getting our neighboring communities to pay some of this so that we're not shouldering such a heavy part of the burden?
No,
Proportionate share?
no, should the other cities contribute, it would offset the, what we actually pay.
Okay.
That's all. It would assist us.
Okay, and then when will it reopen completely? Have we any projected, is it open completely yet, or?
No, it's not open completely yet. Yeah, we're doing the drive-by meals. We're doing parking lot bingo. They're doing one-on-one personal training. They can go to an aquatics class at the aquatic center.
So on a limited basis?
Limited basis right now,
Okay,
yes.
and last but not least, I don't know if it even goes in this category or not, but I think when I drove by, I saw they're starting to repave the parking lot. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have actually
Okay.
completed the parking lot today. It'll be ready for the Veterans Ceremony tomorrow.
Okay, and did that come from capital improvement or from maintenance?
It was funding in the Parks and Recreation General Fund budget last fiscal year.
Okay, thank you for answering all my questions. I appreciate
welcome.
it.
Okay, council, any other comments, questions? Yes, Councilmember Dalla?
Just make a quick comment that had a citizen reach out to me today, actually, and mentioned that they're fairly new to visiting the senior center, and they were quite impressed with the quality of the meals that are being served. So thank you guys. Y'all doing a great job with that.
Okay, council, any other comments? Is there a motion to approve agenda item number 2?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, was that now Mr. Davis? Okay, okay. Motion made by Councilmember Davis, second by Mayor Pro Tem Scott. Any other comments? If not, let's call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 6 ayes, no objection, motion passes. We'll move on to our discussion items, public hearing. Item number 10, ordinance number 20S37. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the comprehensive land use plan by changing approximately 40 acres of land, future land use map from estate neighborhood and agricultural conservation land use designation to single-family residential land use designation, located approximately 4,000 feet east of the intersection between FM 1518 and Lower Seguin Road, also known as Bexar County Property Identification Numbers 310024 and 310031, City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas, and this is our first reading. Mr. Copley?
Good evening, council members. Again, Nick Copier from the Planning Division. So this is an ordinance for the comprehensive land use plan amendment of around 40 acres from estate neighborhood and agricultural conservation to single-family residential. So for context, this is an aerial map of the subject properties here outlined in neon green. These are the fluid tracts. For boundary info, this is Lower Seguin Road, as well as the existing and developing out Rhine Valley subdivision. So it's just across Lower Seguin from that and the Saddlebrook comp plan amendment you acted on earlier this summer. Since this is a public hearing, notice mailers were sent out to the surrounding property owners within 200 feet. At this time, we received 4 in favor of and 1 opposed to the proposed comprehensive plan amendment, with 2 of the in favor votes being represented by the applicant. So what would this proposed amendment look like? So as you can see on the left, the current future land use designations off of this map are estate, neighborhood, and AgCon. And what it would look like on the right is the single-family residential land use designation. You can see the existing single-family residential designation again across Lower Seguin from the Saddlebrook to kind of contextualize where this is. So what did these land use designations mean? Well, the estate neighborhood is intended to address most of the kind of residential development patterns in southern Schertz by requiring larger lots, minimum of half acre. This leaves a couple different development options, either the RA zoning district, which is 2 dwelling units per acre, or the ENPDD, which is a more flexible development option that allows for residential clustering to reduce infrastructure costs and preserve open space. And then the agriculture conservation, which is keeps much of southern Schertz in the rural agricultural state. The proposed designation is the single-family residential land use, which is your traditional neighborhood design consisting of, conventional detached dwellings. So where does this exist on a larger kind of scope of the sector plan? So this is the future land use map. As you can see, the property with the gold star there is kind of situated at the conflux of 3 different land use designations, with the agricultural conservation and estate neighborhood being the only 2 designations on the property, but just to see where it is situated in the larger scope of the map. So moving on to recommendations and kind of considerations. So the first thing staff recommends would be for City Council to take into account the fully funded comprehensive land use plan update for the fiscal year 20 to 21 budget. Effective October 1st, 2020, the new budget allocates funding for a full comprehensive land use plan amendment, which would include contributions from all of the City of Schertz stakeholders, including Southern Schertz residents. The revamp of the plan will allow us to tailor our future land use designations to the evolving needs of our residents, and would enable city staff to make modifications in any sort of given area of Schertz as seen fit. For instance, the lack of residential options that you would see in southern Schertz that have prompted plans like this, or the Saddlebrook Comprehensive Plan Amendment that focus on providing a variety of different housing options through a mix of lot size and product types. That's just an example, but the upcoming rework would allow staff to reconcile those kinds of gaps between our future plan, the residents' desires, and current market conditions. And that may be the most appropriate time to get into modifying the plan on an area-by-area basis, as this proposal is indicating. With that being said, staff does agree with City Council that property owners should have significant influence in the development goals for Southern Schertz, and does defer to their decision to allow property owner-driven modifications to the comprehensive land use plan. This case was presented at the Planning and Zoning Commission on October 14th, who recommended unanimous denial of the comprehensive land use plan, citing potential increased traffic in Southern Schertz with the addition of these single-family residential land uses. The impact of the proposal to the master thoroughfare plan potentially, as well as whether they should recommend approval of changes to individual parcels given the upcoming comprehensive land use plan. But again, staff does recommend approval of the comprehensive land use plan as submitted, and the applicant is here to answer any sort of questions you may have as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Raymond Tureen, if you like to add any comments? All right.
Let me just talk, I guess, first, if they want to see something. Raymond Tarin with MTR Engineers, 12770 Cimarron Pass, San Antonio, Texas. So we're here today requesting, on behalf of Mr. Fluid, a comprehensive land use plan amendment for approximately 40 acres. This is currently a mix of estate neighborhood and agricultural conservation land use designations, and we're asking to change that to single-family residential. There's a portion, though we're not here to talk about zoning really, it kind of plays into it because the zoning's tied to what the land use map shows. The front of the property today, there's about 200 foot in depth that is already zoned RA in the city limits of Schertz. And that, as defined by the city of Schertz, is intended to provide for areas in which agricultural land may be held in such use for as long as is practical and reasonable, and further defines the district is suitable for areas where development is premature due to lack of utilities, capacity of service, and for areas that are unsuitable for development. We're requesting the change in the land use because this no longer applies. Utilities are coming to the area, development is coming to the area, and so that existing zoning, that existing land use designation is no longer feasible for the property. Saddlebrook development that was recently approved for a land plan amendment is directly across the street from this property. So it's going to be bringing the utilities and other amenities to the area that this project was complement This is only 40 acres, so it's going to complement really well with the 230 acres that are planned to be developed across the street, essentially. If this land use amendment is approved, there would be a planned development district, or PDD, that would be submitted at a later time, so that would further define how the tract would be developed. So it's not just a carte blanche change to single-family residential. We would come back with a land plan amendment, rather a PDD, that would further define how the lots would be laid out, how the tract would be used, the amenities that would be associated with the project, and how they would tie into other projects in the area. So just like we've talked about before on the other project we've proposed across the street, this one is going to have additional workforce housing that would complement what we're proposing with the project across the street. We've got an assortment of lot sizes varying from 55 by 125s to 60 by 120s, 70 by 120s. Even though it's a small deal at 40 acres, we're still trying to get a mix and diversity of lots in there. We've got park areas that are planned within the development, trails that connect those park areas to drainage and walkways around the perimeter of the property that would also tie into buffers and landscape areas along Lower Seguin Road that would again tie into the project across the street that would then provide access and walkability to various other, for example, the school area, schools that are in the area. The park area would be planned to be private. The landscape areas would be private, maintained. We would submit at the time of the PDD a landscape plan that defines how that would be laid out and give opportunity to the city to comment on how that should look or would look. And we would work with the city staff to make sure that adequate utilities are provided to the project and that all of the code requirements are met. The project does not create any detrimental issue to adjoining property, does not interfere with the mission of Randolph Air Force Base. It's outside of the air installation compatible use zone and the accident potential zones. It will provide a small diversity of housing. It will incorporate pedestrian connectivity in park spaces. It will provide the proper transition between planned uses in the city master plan. And it's going to meet all the Schertz requirements as I mentioned. Lastly, we're requesting the land plan amendment to change to single-family residential, and it's consistent with City Council has approved with the Saddlebrook development directly across the street. It's consistent with what City Council has stated as a vision for South Schertz, and is supported by and being requested by the current landowner. So I'll be sticking around in case you guys have any questions and specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. This item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject?
Mayor, right here.
Yes, sir. Come on up. Okay, before addressing the council, we ask that, for the record, if you can please state your name and address.
I'm Dr. Alfred Flood. I'm the one that owns the 40 acres in question. And I want to thank you all for bringing this up and considering it. I have been real happy when the neighbors got theirs rezoned, and I would like to have that 40 acres rezoned, because I'm getting to be an old man and I'd like to get my affairs in order before it's another 86 years. So I just feel like this property is joined right across the road and would be an integral part of any future development in the South Schertz area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else like to address the council regarding this subject? Second notice for anyone to address the council? I see no one coming up. Final notice. Public hearing is now closed. Before I open up to council, I do have a couple words I'd like to say regarding this topic. When campaigning for mayor, several residents in Southern Schertz expressed their concerns regarding limited commercial establishments. One of council's objectives should be to accommodate commercial development in Schertz. One major obstacle in South Schertz, insufficient rooftops. Businesses will not take a risk or invest in Schertz if the demographics impede their success. The Planning and Zoning Commission expressed one concern: traffic impact. The road construction on 1518 will address this issue, and future road construction will mitigate growth. The Planning and Zoning's main reason for denial was their desire to wait 1, maybe 2 years until the comprehensive land use plan is finalized. This study should not paralyze our city's growth. It is essential that we seek and create our own destiny. We must also ascertain this developer would have lost interest, and the possibility to entice or lure another developer may be strenuous. It could take 3 years, maybe longer, to get to this same stage in development planning for this slice of Schertz. Similar to the city comprehensive land use plan, developers base new housing development on their market analysis. This analysis consists of several factors to determine the success of their development: the demographics, the demand, the schools, safety, quality of life, taxes, parks, location, roads, and confidence in our city's procedures. One major factor in killing any deal is time. I'm certain this developer would have no objections to waiting a few months, but a lengthy 24 to 36-month delay. This is unreasonable and unacceptable expectations for any developer. Our city staff reviews the feasibility of all projects. A review of the city's master plan to consist of the land, the sewage, the water, the floodplain, and drainage. All these items are considered, and city staff has recommended approval. The planning and zoning process is not a fixed process set by any rules. Planning and zoning is a discretionary process. It's an objective process. One's own judgment, one's opinion, one's feelings. Council will also have their own objective opinion, and I encourage them to base their decision based on logical reasoning also. It can't be farm. It's not suitable for retail. It's not suitable for industrial. It's not multifamily. The city staff approved the request, and the owner, his preference. We must look at the growth of Schertz long-term and continue to build a culture to attract development. We should also be excited, be an enthusiastic partner, be flexible, be creative, be supportive, and seek growth opportunities. Growth in Southern Schertz is unavoidable, and we are at a crucial crosspoints. We are faced with a decision of rising to the challenge and carving a path for future success or becoming idle. Once again, the opportunity is at our doorstep. Council, floor is open for discussion. Yes, Dr. Skagler.
Yeah, Nick, hate to put you on the spot again, but this was disapproved by the Planning and Zoning, 7-0, is that correct?
Not disproved, but recommended denial to you by a 7-0 vote, yes.
That pretty much says the same thing to me.
Yes.
The primary concern was on traffic.
Yeah, there were a number of concerns. Traffic was talked about a bunch during the first kind of, I think, half hour to hour. I think they mentioned the bit piece modifications to the comp plan of kind of parcel by parcel and the justifications for that. But yeah, traffic was a big concern of theirs, potential traffic.
Okay, now, when we approved the rezoning for the Saddlebrook, we were given a whole bunch of information on what their plans were. Was anything much laid out when this was brought before the P&Z?
So, I guess just to clarify first, there was a comprehensive plan amendment for Saddlebrook, not a rezoning, for the same zoning district, though, the single-family residential. So they brought a plan forth to staff in the very beginning, which is kind of how we got to this point of them requesting a comprehensive plan amendment. So what they bring to us and what they do well as an engineering firm and kind of as a product type is this sort of single-family residential. So yeah, they have a plan with kind of mapped out streets and lots and things like that in the mini senators. which led to this comprehensive plan amendment being requested because the existing designations wouldn't necessarily pertain to that type of development. So, yes.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting because I didn't necessarily agree with some of the housing that was planned for the Saddlebrook, and this takes it a step further. Now, from what I could see, is we're looking at R7 or equivalent or less for this particular plat of land.
So we're not necessarily looking at any sort of lot size in particular for this. This would just be for the future land use
Understand,
designation
but
of the
you know
area.
what? If I'm going to get into smart planning, I don't want to look at what's happening right now. I want to look at what's happening 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Sure.
And because they've kind of hinted at us what their desires were or what the future plans were, that causes me concern. Because one, I don't think that RA is such a bad designation for this particular property. And I certainly don't agree with, you can call it anything you want, it's a PDD. However, the lot sizes are small enough to be classified as R5 or R7. I'm not in the habit of approving rooftops just for the sake of having more rooftops. You know, they say we don't have enough rooftops down there, and that's why the businesses aren't coming. I disagree with that premise, I really do. And I'm not going to put in cookie-cutter type houses just to satisfy a density requirement that may or may not really exist. When we were going through the conceptualized planning of the south side of the Schertz, we were looking at farmland, we're looking at open space, not high density. I don't have a problem specifically with calling this piece of property something other than single-family residence. You know, if you want to call it a PDD, fine. And then give staff the opportunity to work with the engineers to actually come up with a structure that actually satisfies the desires of the people who laid out our comprehensive land use plan. That's my thing. As soon as you allow single-family residential, well, you know, quite frankly, a lot of the constraints that we have are gone. Because, hey, it meets zoning, you got to approve it. Well, no. Well, yeah. Sorry about that. So don't put my position is let's not put ourselves in that position where we need to decide that. I don't think this is appropriate for a single-family residency. I have no problem with it being developed, but not with those small lot sizes. That's my position.
Sure.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay. Any others? Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Dalla.
Oh, I have kind of some mixed feelings on this one. You know, I watched the video with planning and zoning and their comments. There's some legitimate concerns, you know, with the traffic. You know, that's one, and it's not to make light of it, but it's a common comment that we see every time something comes in for rezoning. The additional traffic, and, you know, unfortunately, that's kind of the way we grow, is that the traffic gets worse because we need the tax base to pay for the bonds to fix the roads and make them better, and we continue to grow, and we're always behind that curve. And I also really appreciated the comments of the commissioners about, you know, let's look at the area as its entirety versus doing it piecemeal, like we've done one with Saddlebrook, and we're talking about this one tonight. And along those lines, I really kind of agree with that sentiment. But I also, you know, look at what they're proposing and how it fits with the plan. Can you pull the map back up of that area? There we go. And, you know, for years, you know, we've talked about having the multi-use town center around the intersection of 15, 18, and Lower Seguin, where we have the multi-use, where we have the higher density, mixed use, the apartment complexes, the duplexes, the smaller type homes. And, you know, it's never been said explicitly, but, kind of, I think the general consensus is that we would have that high density around the intersection to support some commercial businesses that are there, because, the demographics show that you have to have X number of heads within a certain distance in order to make, retail viable. And I think we always kind of envisioned, as we got away from that intersection, that we would focus on reducing the density. And the next stage of reducing density from mixed-use, multi-use is going to single-family homes. And as we expand further out from that, we would go to the larger lots. And from there, we would go to the rural agricultural estate lots. And even as we update our future land use plan, in my thought process, and being one of the landowners down there, I see that we'll see some changes on it, but I think the concept of the town core and the center around Lower Sagina 1518 will remain. And that's kind of what I'm looking at on this decision, is that this 40 acres is adjoining the area that we have designated as mixed use, and it takes that first step toward reducing the density as we move away from that intersection. And when you look at, knowing the history of that property and how this area has tried to develop since 2006, I think it's fitting, and I think there's also, some rights of the property owner that we need to take into account too, that what has been down there, what hasn't been down there has been inhibiting development, since, this area was taken into the city. And now we're at a point where we're allowing it to start growing, and I don't feel that their plans for this particular parcel are that significantly different from what I think the vision of the future is going to look like. And I will say that I've had the opportunity to see the proposed outline and layout of the property with the PDD, and there's been a couple of iterations of it, and the developers made some pretty significant improvements, and at least in my opinion, as to how it would look. I don't think they're there yet. I think staff would need to continue to work with them to get, the things that we continually talk about that we want to see in our developments in Schertz. But overall, I feel that this is appropriate for where it's located. If this were a half mile down the road, down 1518 or down off of Weir Road, there's no way I could support it, because it'd be totally incompatible with what we're looking at putting in around it. In this particular location, I think it's okay.
Okay, Council, any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Councilman Dalla. I don't think this is too far of a stretch based on its location and based on the other items we've already discussed. There is the concern on traffic in the area, but the reality of it is 1518 is already a done deal. And this project, if approved, still has a significant lag time to it between coming back with a plat and a further design and everything else. This is not going to be a situation where someone's turning dirt tomorrow so that the traffic will be that much of an impact. And again, I understand the comp plan. We have to get it updated. But it's a living document, and this proposed offering is not that far from a stretch from that particular location. And again, as I said previously, I think our current comp plan, we had a good plan, but I think it was kind of out of sync with the back end of Randolph Air Force Base, and that's going to be addressed. I think we're going to see some significant changes in the upcoming comp plan. So I really don't think that this is that far of a stretch for approval.
Mayor Pro Tem Scott.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Councilman Dahl on having mixed feelings about this. I find it a really interesting dynamic that P&Z recommended denial of the residential development and city staff recommends approval. And it's rather, it's really kind of interesting and thought-provoking. Some of the questions that popped in my head when you were going through your presentation was, the first one was, well, when will the Schertz comprehensive land use plan be updated? I mean, we've been talking about that, and I don't know if we have a date projected yet. I know we budgeted for it. The COVID's kind of slowed everything down.
Sure, the plan's in work. I mean, it's part of the next budget. I think the goal is to have it developed within a year to a year and a half of the inception, but
Okay.
Just to remind the councilman, so staff should have a written update in your next packet, kind of outlining the goals and objectives for that, start getting some initial feedback. And then again, you may recall, we also had the senior planner position to manage that. That position is opened and is closed, going through the applications, hope to fill that. That'll let us then ramp this up.
Thank you. I do take issue with saying, I don't know why it's, and I'm just being very objective about it. I don't know why it's not suitable for retail or industrial, but that has to be done right, or it can be big box feeling and we can lose our small town charm mighty fast. Also, as far as the housing and the demographics and the demand, et cetera, that's not going away. Schertz it's hot and it's going to stay hot. As far as a growth property, oh my gosh, it's staggering. The amount of growth out here is breathtaking and it's exponential. It's like on steroids. So if this particular, and I'm not saying it's not appropriate, I'm not making a judgment call, but I'm saying if this particular development, developer, if that doesn't work out and we don't decide in that direction, there will be another one. There certainly will, and they'll be lining up just because of where we are, like in real estate, location, location, location. I'm kind of with Councilman Scagliola on the having everything so condensed and so compressed, and then you're just, you know, you do have to have business to support all that, or it puts an undue tax burden on the citizens. And so I think I asked more questions than I gave answers, but I'm kind of in the middle of all of it as well. So
it's okay.
Those are my thoughts.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward.
I think because it's 40 acres, it's kind of probably hard to do a lot of commercial development or industrial, and we're trying to keep our industrial down off of the industrial plaza. So I'm more inclined to say I am okay with the development going forward because it's further down the road. It's not right there on 1518, and it's not making a big impact. And I believe that in time with the growth, the roads will end up being developed and given more space, so then that would help alleviate traffic. So it's not like it's going to be traffic right away, because usually developments don't get done quickly anyway. So I think for me, I don't have an issue with it going forward.
Any other comments, Council? Councilmember Larson?
Oh, no, I was waiting.
Oh.
I was going to say, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 20S37.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Larson, second by Councilmember Dalla. Council, any other comments, questions? Yes.
I forgot to say that property owners should have a right to do what you want with your own property within reason, and most of the property owners in here are they're on board with this, and they did express it on the record that they would like to be able to sell their own property. I believe in private property and individual rights. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
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 Okay, we have 5 ayes, 1 objection. Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we have another public hearing. Item number 11, ordinance number 20K35. An ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, closing and abandoning to the abutting property owners a portion of urban lane right-of-way between Live Oak Hills Subdivision Lot 1, Block 55, and Live Oak Hills Subdivision Lot 18, Block 54, and establishing an effective date. This is also our first reading. Floor is yours.
Good evening, Nick Copier, Planning Division again. This is ordinance 20K35, the potential abandonment of a portion of urban lane right-of-way in the Live Oak Hills subdivision. So, for a little history, the Live Oak Hills subdivision is a legally platted neighborhood that was filed in 1963 prior to the property being annexed into the city in the 80s. So when the subdivision was being platted in the county, the public infrastructure improvements, so you know the streets, the water, the sewer, were not installed that would be required to serve the lots, leading it to look like there are a number of buildable lots within the Live Oak Hills subdivision that are buildable, but again, this only exists on paper and not necessarily in reality with it not being installed. This is what's commonly referred to as a paper subdivision. Another example of this would be Freeway Manor up along 35, a subdivision that you guys would know. Again, public hearing, so this was a public notice mailers were sent out to the property owners within 200 feet. As of now, we've gotten 8 responses in favor and none opposed, with these 4 being represented by the applicant and these 4 with the surrounding property owners. To make this a little easier, we have a reference map here. So the property outlined in green is the lot within the Carolina Crossing subdivision that the applicant owns, and this is Carolina Crossing, this line down. These red lots here are the lots within the Live Oak Hills subdivision that the applicant owns, and this orange section here is the portion of the urban lane right-of-way that is proposed to be abandoned. So after being approached by the owner about requesting the abandonment to kind of increase their backyard and utilize all of this property, staff did a little bit of research and came up with a few options that would allow it to meet the goal of the property owner to utilize it as yard, as well as kind of meeting city ordinances and state law. The 3 options, number 1, the abandonment of the right-of-way and replat of the newly abandoned land with the other lots in Live Oak Hills. So that would involve the abandonment of this portion here and then the replat of all of this land together. The second option would be the abandonment of the right-of-way, the vacation of the lots in Live Oak Hills, and then replat all of that land together into the Carolina Crossing homestead lot. So that would be the abandonment of this portion, the vacation, which means taking these lots outside of the Live Oak Hills subdivision and putting them into this one lot in the Carolina Crossing subdivision. And then the third option, which would be a license agreement allowing the property owner to essentially lease the right-of-way space. And after consideration, the property owner requested that the right-of-way be abandoned without having to do any sort of replat. So not required to do any sort of replat after the abandonment of the right-of-way. Now, the primary objection that staff would have to abandoning the right-of-way and not requiring a replat would be the potential ramifications for the abandoned portion of that right-of-way being sold separately. Now, I'm not doubting the intent of what the property owner wants to do, absolutely, that he wants to utilize it as kind of a backyard. But if this gets abandoned and then potentially sold separately, what you could have is a situation where this lot and this lot no longer have access to any sort of public street. And so that's not something that staff would necessarily want to potentially enable in the future. Now, the options that I outlined a little bit earlier that involve platting also have limitations. The first one of the right-of-way abandonment and the replat of the newly abandoned land with the other lots in Live Oak Hills. So the difficulty there is that the replat of all of this land together would trigger the public infrastructure improvements that would be needed to serve that new lot there in Live Oak Hills. So like I said, it's a paper subdivision. It doesn't have any improvements, it has no water, streets, or sewer. And so that would have to be installed per city ordinance when they're going through this replat process. That can be extremely cost prohibitive. And so that's definitely a limitation for that one specifically. The second option, the right-of-way abandonment and the vacation of the lots in Live Oak Hills, per state law, the vacation of these lots would require express written consent from all the other property owners within the Live Oak Hills subdivision, which would be very unlikely. So that's not necessarily a viable option for the property owner as well. And then the third option, staff is very supportive of the license agreement. With a license agreement, the city essentially leases the area of that right-of-way to the property owner to utilize as a backyard, but still retains ownership so that with the potential redevelopment or any sort of new utilization of that right-of-way that's required, the city still owns the property and can move forward with using it. Now, again, the problem with the request to abandon the right-of-way without having to go through the replat process after, again, like I said, the installation of those public improvements, the applicant could request a waiver to the Planning and Zoning Commission to not have to install those public improvements. However, staff would not be supportive of that waiver with the Planning and Zoning Commission. City staff has a number of issues kind of involving a lot of these paper subdivisions with, for instance, people buying lots in something like Freeway Manor or Live Oak Hills, not understanding that there's not infrastructure there and expecting to be able to build this lot how they saw fit when they purchased the property, only to learn that they'd have to install all of these, streets, water, and sewer. And so if we would allow a replat without the installation of these public infrastructure, it would put us in a difficult situation regarding any future kind of requests to do the same thing, replatting without the installation of any sort of public infrastructure improvements. So to outline, staff does recommend denial of Ordinance 20K35, which specifically requests the abandonment of the right-of-way without a replat. But staff does remain supportive of the license agreement, thinks it would be a great compromise and a win-win for both parties, and would be willing to enter into one of those. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this item is on the agenda as an open public hearing. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to address the council in reference to this subject?
No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice!
Is there a...
No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice!
Is there anyone that would like to address the council in reference to this subject? Yes. For the record, could you please state your name and address?
Shannon Kelm, 3625. Shannon Kelm, 3625 Diamond Falls. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Shannon Kelm, and I own the property at 3625 Diamond Falls, along with my husband, Charles, and our children, Cohen, who just came from marching band practice, Caitlin, who's a 7th grader at Corbett, and Chloe, who's a 3rd grader at Pascal. So please bear with me. I've been working from home for 8 months and haven't spoken to live people in that entire amount of time. So tonight, we would like to request the vacation of the right-of-way and easements at the terminus of Urban Lane in the Live Oak Hills subdivision. Urban Lane has gone unused for 70 years. According to the Transportation Code, you have the authority to vacate this portion of the unused and undeveloped land. To set the scene of where we're talking about, we're in the bottom square down here at the City Council chambers, and then north on Schertz Parkway off of Wiederstein is the area that we're talking about. Here's an overhead view at the blue arrow. This is the Carolina Crossings North subdivision, and this is the Live Oak Hills subdivision. So as you saw from Nick's presentation, the gray rectangles would be the properties that we own in the Live Oak Hill subdivision. The large green rectangle is our home at 3625 Diamond Falls. And then the smaller green square is what we're talking about, the property in question, which is a 60 by 60 foot area of the undeveloped and unmaintained urban lane. I think you saw this particular diagram similarly in the city staff's presentation. This is what Urban Lane currently looks like. The top left picture is the entrance to Urban Lane from Wiederstein. The two blue lines would be the edges of the roadway. The bottom right picture shows as you travel down Urban Lane to the property in question, and the top right picture is the actual area in question. So our planned use for this area is to have a spot for our kids to play. Currently, you can see we have a swing set up, a tire horse, a picnic table. As you heard, city staff's primary objection is their view that the abandonment would require a replat of all 3 sections into one property. We don't feel that the replat is necessary. The current abutting lots own the portion of the road fee simple to the center line of Urban Lane, subject only to the right-of-way easements. So in simple terms, once abandoned, half of the road would go to each lot. So this is what it would look like from overhead. As you can see, both lots would have 30 feet of access to Urban Lane. A standard driveway width would be 24 feet. If council approves the abandonment request but requires a replat, this is the approximate cost to extend utilities, approximately $200,000. We would like to request a waiver to the requirement to extend utilities. To sum up, we request you approve the ordinance to abandon the right-of-way and easements at the terminus of Urban Lane. If a replat is required, we request a waiver for the Unified Development Code requirement to extend utilities. We chose Schertz as our home when Charles retired from the Air Force in 2017. The approval of our request will give us the safe environment for our children and their friends to grow up in, and hopefully their children too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, second notice for any comments regarding this, this subject?
Hi, I'm Tracy Grooms, and I actually abut that property. Can you put the picture back up, please, Kimberly? So I can show you where I live, 3621. Just in the mouse? Yeah. I actually own the property adjacent to the home, to the lot that we're referring to, the one with the pool that we're looking at. And that road that has back there has not been used, quite frankly. That is where my daughter learned to drive. Down the brakes and learn how they work. So I agree, it is an unused property. But the one thing that I would like to make sure that, I don't know if you know or don't know, there are fox back there. Fox. F-O-X? Yes, ma'am, I have pictures of them recently. And there are quite a few deer and different things there. The only thing I asked is that as we do develop and do things, that we take into account that the people that live in the subdivision in Carolina Crossings actually pick up the remnants of that. And one thing I'd ask the city to consider, that if you come down further on the property where that road is, there's another road. Again, we have them coming in the greenway and things like that. So although I think it's an awesome idea, I would ask you to really sit down and look at that lot and think about what you're doing, and think about the number of people that have been hit on Schertz Parkway or hit the deer. Let's allow them to use the home and do what they want to do, but let's be fair to all the neighbors that have to look at, as we improve, the fox, the rodents, and different things like that, which as a taxpayer and living here since we built there, I think the city has to stand up and just respect us as living in the community, and as you develop, help us out with some of the livestock that lives there so that it does not encroach on where we live.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, please step up to the mic.
Oh, thank you, love. Hello, thank you, respectfully. First of all, this is all wonderful, but that's a different privilege that we're not worried about right now. What we're worried about is the key right now. So it seems like we're not getting here, and I want everybody to stay focused, because I see people, I don't know if you're on your phone, I don't know if you're on your tablets, but right now this is serious. And so I'm bringing this.
Excuse me. We're referencing this ordinance,
Oh, the
nothing
privilege
else.
of worrying about lots,
Yes.
not lives. So we're going to get to lives. When we going to get there? Are we going to get there soon? Am I next? I'll step until we next, because I can let y'all finish this.
This is in reference to the ordinance. Will you please
Come
be...
back when it's time for
Okay, thank you. Any other comments regarding this subject? Okay, final notice regarding... Yes, sir.
In Greenwald, 205 Westchester, nothing's changed. Lived there since 1972, when I first got here. None of those roads, water, sewer, nothing has been accomplished in that lot or those lots since 1972. And it was platted long before that. All I can say is this is at least something that the children can play. I realize the house is good size, but the land isn't big enough. That's his fault, I'm sure, but he's got an idea how to fix it. I think we ought to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? This is in reference to the public hearing. Any other comments on the public hearing? Not. Last notice. Public hearing is closed. Council, floor is open for discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Scott.
Oh, thank you, sir. I was just, whenever I was looking at that road back there, the urban road, we do have a lot of wildlife. I live down by the old folks' home, and there's a lot of deer that go over there. And we're going to, as Schertz gets developed, we have a lot of critters running around. That's why I was concerned about the fox. I mean, I really am, because the animals have to go somewhere too. And I don't think it's a silly thing to say. I don't think it's gratuitous. I do think that it matters where, it makes me sad when I see the deer out on the road and all that, you know. So, So, I do want to go on the record.
Please, will you please behave yourself in a professional manner? You had an opportunity to speak.
And so I do think that to not develop every little thing is kind of a benefit, because we have to consider other things as well. And I think it's great that you brought your kids here. And I love to see children growing up in the community. And that's why my husband and I moved out here too. We could have moved anywhere, but we love Schertz, and we built out here, and we build our lives out here. We have 4 children. We have 4 children who attended the schools here, and I know what it's like to lose a child. I lost my daughter when she was in college. I know what grief is like, and I applaud you for raising your children here. And I did want to say we might end up like Hollywood Park, where we have a lot of, deer running around and what have you. But anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
And I think it's good.
Hold on. For those of you that joined us earlier, you had an opportunity to sign up and speak and address this council. You chose not to put your name on this. Now you chose to disrupt our council. We're here to discuss city matters. You had the opportunity. You showed up late.
Are we not on the ballot today?
No, you're not.
Okay, hold on.
Excuse me.
You can cut my microphone off. You can do what you want to do, but I'm going to speak. And I'm going to speak on brutality of what's going on. And I want to speak about Zaki, who everybody's seen the video. We already know that. So we're going to talk about this then. So y'all want to bring up Zaki's record. Let's bring up the... What is that going to do?
We're out of order. We're here.
What is that going to do?
Okay.
What is that going to do?
If you had an opportunity,
Well, we thought we were on the ballot.
No, it's not on the agenda. We cannot comment on anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay, because we worried about white people's
Will you please, behave yourself in a professional manner?
Y'all telling me y'all got this officer still out there patrolling.
Will you please
when they're
behave
supposed to be
yourselves
on
in a professional manner?
If they're on investigation, they should not still be patrolling.
Tell your police to behave themselves.
Will you please?
Are they still patrolling? They're still patrolling under investigation.
We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess.
I'm sure. So the smartest thing to do is to let us speak.
No peace. No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace. We either speak tonight or it's going to be a hot mess.
No justice. 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 Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. No justice. 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 Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Give me a minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. If you give me... They're not going to... Okay. Go to the back.
They're suggesting we go to the back room so they don't have
Yes.
And this is
Capri.
Capri?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So I know you're gonna let the family talk, but can you let the can you add another 3 minutes for the public?
Are you going to represent the public?
Yes. I'll do
Okay, and that's
Irvin Lee.
Lee?
Like Bruce
Okay.
Lee.
Okay.
You're the mayor?
Sometimes it's hard to read.
Yeah,
the
you gotta get a better pen. You gotta get a better pen. You guys can afford one.
marker.
All right, thank you, sir.
We'll just wait a couple more minutes until the rest of the council is seated, and then we'll continue to proceed. We'll finish up with agenda item number 11, and then we'll open up the hearing the residents for three guests. Okay, our regular city council meeting is back in session. We were discussing ordinance, item number 11, ordinance number 20K35. We'll finish up that ordinance, and then we'll allow the hearing the residents for 3 additional speakers. Okay, we had finished up with the public hearing, and the floor was open for council for any questions or comments. Mr. Larson?
So, I guess my understanding is that the city's largest concern with abandoning the right-of-way and not replatting is in the event that this property in the future was sold individually. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, let me say, it's a couple of things, really. Part of what we worry about, because we deal with Freeway Manor and Live Oak Hills and the properties there, is we struggle with these paper subdivisions. And to some degree, it was something that we have to deal with because it was created before the city took over. I think staff's concern is perpetuating that when we make decisions that abandon the right-of-way, don't require the replat or the vacation of it, don't make those assurances, then city action has occurred that people sort of rely on to assume that things are done with property. That's really the issue. And so that's the main thing, I think, from a staff perspective. Right now, if somebody buys one of those lots, they can buy one of those lots. They made that decision. Frankly, the city didn't approve any of that. Our concern here is that we're starting to make approvals that to some degree complicate that. And then if a property owner were to buy it and comes in, well, the city agreed to the abandonment, didn't make provision for the infrastructure. When is the city going to put it in? And I think that's a bit of the issue that we've got. And the concern isn't this particular case necessarily, but we field a lot of these type issues, and that's the concern, which is why staff said, let's see if we can find a way to do something different, thus the license agreement. Because I think our position is, you're right, it's sort of wasted land that sits out there. It maybe home for wildlife, but it creates other issues. And so with a license agreement is a way to really put that under the control of the property owner so they can maintain it, they can use it. We think it's something we can replicate with other property owners. And then as we work to try to come to some resolution down the road, and again, I'll point out on the opposite side of Schertz Parkway, we have a developer who's accumulated a bunch of those and is going to come in and redevelop those. So that takes care of that. We've talked to council about Freeway Manor and what we can do there. And so to some degree, the license agreement, well, maybe not perfect for the applicant, allows them to use that property, allows us to work through this, and that, maybe one day we're standing up here saying, hey, at this point, we can start vacating these right-of-ways to the adjacent property owners because we have another solution to get around it. But our concern is, again, somebody comes in tomorrow and says, hey, I want to do a similar thing. Is our position, then we allow it, and where do we have other issues? Or they come in and say, well, I purchased it under the assumption that the city had done this, and what's the issue? And so that's really the reason for city staff.
Well, and I'm going to be honest, and I'm probably a little slow, but I don't fully understand the concern. So my understanding was that you said, we're worried that because we're taking action on this property, it may further add to the confusion of property owners or future property owners who purchase these lots that can't be built on.
I think the issue the city has is folks rely, from a staff perspective, we hear that folks rely on the city. So when the city approves a plat, the assumption is all the provision for access and infrastructure has been made. And that when the city were to take an action related to a property, that we've considered all of these things, and thus they're safe to make a purchase or an investment or things like that. And that would be the concern for us going forward, is that it's not us dealing with a subdivision that was created before it was annexed into the city and we're kind of left to deal with it, but that we had a role to create in that and made a decision that someone might have relied on for that.
Well, I guess my confusion, because I'm not involved in the process like y'all are, is if somebody's looking that deep into, because my understanding is the problem is people aren't looking into the thing and then they're buying the property. If someone's looking that deep into the property, wouldn't they also see that it was a waiver that was outside the norms, so they would ask additional questions?
They might, and I think that's part of the problem, is we get some folks that dig a little bit, we get some folks that dig a lot, we get some folks that say, hey, council approved a waiver on this one, so I'm going to come in and ask for a waiver. And again, what do we do in that circumstance where...
I mean, I've been here 4 years. This is the first time that I can think of a paper subdivision requested a right-of-way abandonment and then a waiver of the requirement to replat. So like how big of a problem is this?
So I will say this, I don't know that we've received a right-of-way vacation request before, but I will say that staff fairly often deals with property owners in these paper subdivisions. So for instance, you'll recall the presentation on Freeway Manor and the challenges there, and we've not, I don't think, come back to you to say, hey, here's the game plan going forward, because it's a challenge. And so again, is this the end of the world? It's not the end of the world, but I think, again, it was something that staff had enough concerns about it, and because we had come up with what we felt was a good compromise alternative, that we were comfortable with it.
Well, I guess this is where I'm confused and trying to understand, because I feel like, doesn't this remove some of the problem? I mean, we're talking about the Manor one, and we're in our meetings on that, we're saying this is going to be a problem for 20, 30, 40 years. And I feel like this is at the edge of the property, and we're abandoning the right-of-way and adding it to a different piece of property. Doesn't that that's 2 lots in a 60 by 60 square that less of the paper subdivision that we don't have to worry about? Or?
You could make that case that, yeah, this goes to solve that problem. Sure.
But staff doesn't feel like it solves the problem.
I think staff, yeah, I think staff in our dealings with property owners out in these paper subdivisions and with plating issues has concerns about it.
I mean, what about the lease? I mean, what kind of term are you talking about? How do you sell a property that a big chunk of it is leased by the city? And what rights do the city have to revoke on that lease?
Sure, and so certainly we could work up the terms of the lease. And again, I think from a staff perspective, what we've discussed is not something where, let me back up and maybe revisit it. I think likely what we would want is the ability to cancel that lease, frankly, as we do with any kind of leases or agreements or contracts, on short notice. What would cause us to cancel that license agreement other than we have found some bigger solution for the area and we're going to move down that path? I frankly don't know. I'm not sure that we would. But what it does is it doesn't move us in this decision that we can't undo down the road.
All right, thank you. That answered my questions. I mean, just my comments. Obviously, there's an absurdity to council where random elected individuals are making decisions on these kind of things. But I think sometimes that absurdity is a benefit. And in my opinion, I think this is one of those situations where the absurdity is a benefit. And you can have someone who is not tied down by kind of the norms and ordinances and requirements, and can say, hey, there's some caveat emptor, there's also a property owner and a bunch of unused land, and we can legally solve that with a wave of a magic council wand. And so I think in this case it makes sense.
Hey, yes, Councilmember Dalla.
I guess for me, this is, I guess you could say it would be precedent-setting for future cases. And that's probably the biggest concern about just abandoning this and letting the property owner take it. You know, I know in a number of other cases where we have required property owners to do things that they didn't necessarily want to do, and not that we had any objection to what their planned use was, but you know, we were thinking about what was going to happen 40 years from now when that property turned over, and there were some entitled rights that we didn't want to see as part of our growth and development, and so we had them do a PDD versus allowing them to do what they wanted to do under the straight zoning. I think, you know, looking out for the future of this undeveloped land, at some point it will develop, and I need to make sure that we need to keep open the options that we have.
Okay. Councilmember Hayward.
It was developed on paper 60 years ago, something like that?
Something like that before I was born.
63? Okay, so that's a long time ago. Nothing's been done with it. I don't see why we can't just, you know, give them the right-of-way and they don't have to, you know, replat it and, you know, because at this point, we're not getting any utilities or any infrastructure in that area at this point anyway. And looking at it, it's at the very tip of this subdivision that's on paper, so the street can stop wherever their land is, because am I correct that they own the other two lands, that the other two properties that's on the side of this little road? Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Basically, if they own these two and we're just giving them this little bitty portion, so if there's another subdivision that comes, that paper subdivision, can you go back to that picture?
I mean,
The one with the box, the
gonna come up and do
gray
it. Which
boxes.
one do you want?
Right there, yes. So they own these two properties, and right here in the middle is the section that they're trying to get, and this is where that road comes in. So basically, they're at the very tail end of this road, so it would end up being a dead end anyway, and we don't have any infrastructure there. It's been since 1963, so that's over 50 years old. I'm not sure how that's going to work, because same thing with Freeway Manor. We have no infrastructure there. Doesn't seem like we're putting any there anyway.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't see why we can't just give over the land and give the waiver so that they don't have to do the utilities. Because to me, trying to put in the utilities, that's like buying another house.
Yeah, we agree as well. We didn't think the solution to replat and put in the utilities was viable as well. We agree entirely.
I don't see why we can't just abandon it, and then it's all included with them, so if they tend to sell this, then it would be together later, or it would be three separate properties?
They are separate parcels, yes.
Separate parcels, okay.
So no, they don't have to sell together. And so again, to be clear, I don't doubt that in all likelihood, they would sell all of these together when they sell the house in the adjacent subdivision. I don't doubt that they would likely do that. I think we have concern that, as Councilman Dolly said, that we are setting a precedent, and that as we go forward and start approving things like this, that we will find ourselves in a situation where someone doesn't, and now we have that challenge. How likely it is, I couldn't tell you, don't know.
I'm like, and I've not been on council as long as Mr. Larson, but this is the first time I've ever seen something, and in coming to council before I was on council, first time I've ever seen it, so I don't know
Yes,
how.
ma'am. Yeah, again, as I said, I think this is the first right-of-way vacation we've had. I think we can all certainly wait and see, you know, if this is approved, what this leads to with other properties. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Scagliola.
I don't want to take a lot of time with this, but the simplest thing would be the lease, and that really doesn't, I don't like the idea of abandoning property altogether. So if we did the lease, that would be workable in this situation?
I think from a staff perspective it is. I think, again, the property owner, it didn't work for them, and thus they sought to come forward. But I think the license agreement works for, you know, staff thinks has a lot of positives, and we think it's something that perhaps we could replicate in Live Oak Hills and other areas.
Okay, good.
To deal with what is
so in order to do that, we need to deny this particular ordinance, and then you can sit down and start drafting up a lease agreement?
Yes.
Would that be the
city attorney? Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not a lawyer. I'll let you do it. Okay, Mayor, make a motion to deny.
David.
Oh, excuse me.
Councilmember Davis.
Jumping the gun here. This one I found interesting, looking at the packet, because in the packet, we've got two diagrams, and they both look like they're established roads in there. And if you bring up the Google Map or Google Earth perspectives first, what I find interesting about this is it's a dead-end road. I mean, if Urban Lane was ever built, and of course it's not right now, it's not going to go anywhere beyond that green block. It's not like it's going to go forward into Carolina North and tie into Diamond Falls because there's houses in the way.
That's right.
So to me, it's basically, again, we inherited a plat from a paper subdivision that was not done by anything in the city, way before the city brought this land into the boundaries. So what's the difference between ending Urban Lane, where Urban Lane ends right now, or at the front of those two properties? I mean, so what's the real impact here? To me, it almost looks as though if Urban Lane ended in front of those properties, you ultimately get something like a cul-de-sac versus just a straight dead-end road. And then the other part, I mean, I see no logic to requiring someone to replat either as part of Carolina North or as part of Live Oak Hills here. Is it Live Oak Hills?
Yes, sir.
And incurring that cost of utilities for, there's nothing there. I mean, it's just fundamentally ridiculous. Can you go back to the one where you showed the property owners, well, this one right here. So who, or that one?
That one?
Now go back to the one you just had up.
Okay.
So the property owner owns the one on the left, the one on the right. We're talking about abandoning the end of a dead-end road, potentially. Do we know who owns, for potential impact, the lots in front of that? Because this is a weird parcel in here.
Sure.
Again, half of it, or, you know, there's two large sections of this entire paper plat that are, for all intents and purposes, non-developable because they've got utility right-of-ways, overhead power lines, the LCRA line goes through there. We're getting ready to put a walking trail through there. Do we know who owns those other properties there that would be impacted by this?
I believe the property owner owns this lot as well, and then I believe the school district owns that lot. It's my recollection.
So even if you, so the issue is if you abandon it, those are still considered three separate parcels, and I guess the concern is if the property owner decided to give up or sell a parcel, then that could potentially impact somebody down the road.
Yeah, the issue we have is we have property owners with these lots in this general area along the back who have approached us to do things, develop on their lots, and that creates challenges for us. And so again, you're right. If it were this thing of, hey, this is crazy, nobody would ever do this, I think staff might look at it differently. But yeah, we have a long correspondence with a nearby property owner about what they can and can't do to their property and the requirements to construct infrastructure and things like that, and thus staff's reticence to recommend approval of it. But again, is it the end of the world? No. Does it maybe create some issues for us down the road? I think staff is concerned it might, but it is what it is.
You know, I appreciate the staff's concerns about the potential down the road. The reality of it is, it seems like, as we found out with Freeway Manor, that we have several areas out there that are problematic, to put it nicely, going forward for the development of the city of Schertz. You know, to me, I can understand a concern if we were talking about abandoning right-of-way and it was somewhere up at the front by Wiederstein where you're accessing all those other lots, or if it was in the middle of that stretch where it might be problematic. I'm less concerned with it being problematic at the very end of that road, especially concerning that road is, like I said, it's not going to go any further than that in any way, shape, or form. And the reality of it is, you know, are we setting a precedent, or could we set a precedent? Maybe, probably, but the reality of it is, as we look around the city of Schertz, you're going to find these problems in multiple areas. And it really does, in my perspective, come down to a case-by-case instance of, you know, in one situation, it may be the right thing to say, let's just abandon it and be done with it. In another sense, it may be, no, it's got to stay right away. And in a third instance, it may be, maybe we can do a license agreement and see where it goes from there. You know, this one I think is kind of interesting. I'd like to hear the lawyer's opinion on it. I did find it interesting on the residence one where I talked about the traffic code says you can abandon this. I'd like to go back and look at that again.
So I think part of the concern that we have is that you're correct. Right now, it is a dead-end street, which is not allowed in our subdivision regulations. So while that owner does own each property across from that and the one north of it, it's a perfect opportunity to cul-de-sac that dead-end street. I mean, so we're talking about abandoning this when, I mean, we could be, as part of that requirement, requiring the dedication of additional right-of-way so that we can have that cul-de-sac, so it's not a dead-end street if he plats it. I mean, that solves your problem on that whole street. Instead of just throwing up our hands and saying, well, it's dead-end, we can't do anything about it, part of the condition could be, okay, fine, yeah, we'll close that, but you're going to dedicate enough for a cul-de-sac between your 3 lots there so that we don't have this problem. The other option, I mean, I don't want to confuse lease agreements and license agreements because 2 different things. Lease agreements convey an interest in real property. A license agreement doesn't. It's permission to use. Yeah. And so my recommendation when this came up was, look, there's no urgency here. We have a bigger problem than this one property that we're trying to get our hands around in this whole area. Yeah. The city's been working for, well, since I've been representing the city, on trying to come up with a solution that will address this whole subdivision. A license agreement gives that additional time without, it doesn't impact this property owner. They'll have the use of the property. The terms of the license agreement allow them to put a fence across there if they want.
Yeah, and I think we even talked about looking at some amendments to the UDC to effectively, you know, that, for instance, we've got restrictions on fence height in the front yard. I think we had the ability to look at tweaking the ordinance to, in fact, really make some of those things more, that you can really not be hamstrung by those requirements. So again, it's not quite what they want, but I think as the city attorney said, we felt like, hey, we can take this thing and here's a path forward for us that may be useful, that again, doesn't close the door on something as we move forward. Because again, if you had asked me 9 years ago when I started, would that property owner on the other side of Schertz Parkway ever acquire enough properties in Live Oak Hills to be able to redevelop? I thought, and I'm glad I'm not the one invested in that. I don't think so. But he has. And I think that's part of where staff looks at this is, yeah, it's been, you know, there before I was born. But again, Schertz is going to be around long after I'm gone and leaves the door open for solutions to correct it down the road, which I think is ultimately what staff wants. How do we really find a solution that lets those property owners back there really fully use property?
Oh, and I'll just point out that a license agreement is not permanent. If we do the abandonment, it is permanent. There's nothing to say we can't come back in a couple years after we focused a little bit more on forest manor and know what it is we want to do, what we need to do. There's nothing to say we couldn't come back in a year or 2 and say, you know what, yeah, this is probably just fine, and go ahead and do it then.
Okay, Mr. Larson, you had additional comments?
I'd have to respectfully disagree with it's permanent. We get easements all the time. I mean, so if you abandon it and it reverts back to those lots or it reverts to that owner, if we abandon it, we have right-of-way acquisition and procedures like that all the time. We've just done that on 1518 for, I don't know, what, 100 and some property owners where there's a lot of folks down there that said, I don't want to give up right-of-way for widening 1518, but at the end of the day, it happened. So, I mean, I don't think anything is necessarily permanent, but yeah. I still, like I said, I think it's ridiculous to talk about replatting this now as either part of Carolina North or as a replat of this. I'm not quite sure what that would accomplish, because if so much of this is not compliant with our comp plan, UDC, and everything else, I'd be willing to assume that as a developer comes in here and looks at acquiring multiple properties, you know, they're going to come back in with an entire new plat process. And in reality, what we see right now in that one attachment as Urban Lane, Troy Lane, and Shade Lane may not even exist, depending on how they plat that out. Is that a potential?
It is a potential. Now, the issue to keep in mind is that becomes more problematic where you have these parcels owned by other property owners. So you're right. Again, as we talked about, we had a property owner on the other side who spent decades, they'll tell you, acquiring all of those in order to be able to do that. And the issue you've got is one property owner may be able to preclude that going forward, which is why it's such a long haul on that.
How many different property owners do we have on this side of?
I would have to go, I'm going to hazard a guess, and I'm probably wrong, maybe 10, 12, something like that. You know, the bulk of it's owned by the school district.
Same problem up at Freeway Manor.
It's a bit of a different problem than Freeway Manor, I would say. Again, just to keep in mind, the bulk of the properties on, we'll call it this side of Schertz Parkway, are owned by the school district. We have a property owner couple that have acquired along the frontage of Schertz Parkway as well. And then the city has acquired on the LCR easement. But then you've got, and then a number of the folks who back up in Carolina have picked up lots back there as well. So we have those. And then there are a few scattered throughout. So maybe 12, I'd guess. But again, I could be wrong. It could be half that. It could be twice that.
So, Mayor, if I could also, Mayor, just one more thing quickly. So the other thing is, it's, as described by the applicant, his description is a little bit erroneous. So the common practice for cities, if you abandon this, you can't gift anything, right? So you're not giving away anything. There's a value to this property. If you have to acquire additional right-of-way, as you know, I mean, we're going to have to buy it elsewhere. So there's a value to this. It also, common practice is a quitclaim deed from the city whenever you close this and convey it. So it doesn't just automatically be absorbed into the adjacent properties. That is where it was dedicated from. But it has to be platted into those properties for that to be the case, for it to be part of those properties. And we're not going to convey a lot that's less than 5 acres and not have it be platted.
Yeah, and I think, and I will say this creates, and again, I want to be clear, don't doubt this property owner. But again, the problem staff gets into, and I'll look at Nick and Lisa, is where we have someone who approaches us that we sit there and go, that sounds kind of fishy, I'm not so sure about that, because we don't have the ability necessarily to say, you know, I don't believe you on that kind of a thing. And so the worst case scenario for staff to deal with somebody walking in on a situation like this somewhere else is, they walk in with this property, for example, it's got no access to right-of-way at all. There's no way to get to it even. And that becomes the challenge. And so our concern is what we do elsewhere. So you're right, staff may be overly cautious on this. We tend to be, and that may be in part because we deal with the folks that come in daily. It may be because we just worry, or we want to make sure we gave you all the information. But I think from talking with the city attorney, from dealing with the other issues we've got, you know, we weren't comfortable recommending approval of it. It's not the end of the world. Our feeling was a license agreement is a good step forward. And then certainly I think much as council's direction was, you know, we can look at what do we need to do to kind of ramp up and restart to try to fix these problems? Because to some degree, I'm extremely empathetic to folks who buy these lots, be it Freeway Manor or here, who walk in, and staff has to be the bearer of bad news of there's no water, there's no sewer, and they say, I don't need water. And we literally get that, or I don't need sewer, or there's a structure, how do you have sewer? We deal with those. And so that's part of why staff tends to be a little more cautious, is we're the ones that left to deal with that going forward. But it is what it is.
I get more questions.
Yeah, Councilmember Larson, you had additional comments? No?
Still got more.
Okay, Councilmember Davis.
So the property owner's got 3 properties, L-shaped actually.
Right.
And the question is the end of Urban Lane. So one option would be to replat those lots in Live Oak Hills. But that would require installation of utilities.
Right.
And that is not waiverable, or?
It is, you can, the Planning and Zoning Commission can grant a waiver to that. But again, I think that, you know, I hate to say this, but staff would frankly, whether you approve this as requested, then go that route and grant a waiver. Because a replat without the infrastructure, somebody goes, oh, the city approved a plat for this. There's nothing tied to that to say there's no infrastructure there. And so to some degree, that is probably, in staff's mind, the worst thing that we could do is approve the replat with the waiver on infrastructure, and then now that can be bought and sold, whatever, and people tend to rely when something's been platted recently that it's got infrastructure. So we agree, it's not a viable option. We just wanted to run the gamut. We also agree, you know, ideally, we could get all the owners of property in Live Oak Hills plat to sign off to vacate a portion of the plat. That is ideal, because then the property owner can replat all of their lots if they want, the right-of-way into this lot, and now we've got a situation where the lot has water, sewer, roads access, it's all one lot, platted, so we know it's bought and sold together. That's ideal. But in reality, that's not going to happen because of so many property owners. And I will tell you, we regularly have to tell someone no, and I look at Lisa because she's often the bearer of bad news in a different area that has not been able to get the property owners to sign off on a vacation of the plat, and they're sitting there with a building that they can't use, and we are struggling to deal with that with them, but to do it in a way that doesn't create other problems. And thus we tend to be...
So to vacate those lots out of Live Oak Hills and bring them into Carolina North, that would take all the other property owners in Live Oak Hills?
That's right.
To sign off on it?
That's right. And you're just never going to get everybody to, I think. I mean, you know, again, it's not worked for other folks. And thus we didn't want to recommend approval of something that's also not viable. Because again, we don't want to stand up here and say...
We have a large chunk that's owned by the city of Schertz. We have a couple chunks that are owned by a CCISD.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, and particularly, let me say this, because again, I don't want it to go unsaid. Council may remember a few years ago, we had talked about acquiring that property from the school district. And so certainly, if the city were to acquire that, now we own a big chunk. If the timing worked out with the property who still own that stuff down there before the replat, that may be a good chance to take a run at it. And it may be the city, because we have ownership, taking a run at trying to get those people to sign off. You know, that could be an effort we undertake to try to facilitate that. I'm just not hopeful, and so I don't want to imply that we can do that. It's a tough one, and so.
Okay, City Manager Dr. Brown, you had some comments?
So, you know, as Brian said, the school district owns the vast majority of that property. I mean, I seriously doubt, it's not impossible that it would be developed, but I seriously doubt that the school district, in fact, they want to unload that property, I think, and I just don't think they're going to develop it. So I really, you know, that property has sat vacant, as we all know, for many years, and I doubt that that's going to happen. I think just council has to balance, you know, the precedent setting of this and what could happen in the future. And I think, you know, it could mean that we bring more cases to you that are similar to this, and that might be the worst thing that could happen.
Okay. Any other comments? Dr. Scagliola, a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to deny ordinance number 20K35.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Scagliola and second by Councilmember Dalla. Any other comments or questions? None. Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Nay.
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 Aye.
We have 2 ayes and 3 objections.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 20K35.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Scott Larson to approve, second by Councilmember Hayward. Any other comments or questions? None. Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Okay, we have 3 ayes, 2 objections. Motion passes.
No, it doesn't. It needs 4. We do.
We have a majority. We have a quorum.
I don't think this requires a supermajority, does it, Dan?
No.
Simple majority, right?
Simple majority.
Simple majority? Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and go back to the hearing of residents. And bear with me here. Okay. Once again, this time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the City Council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the council, for the record, please state your name and address. The first one is Diane Rayford. Dina Rayford.
Dina. First of all, he took way longer than 3 minutes, but I will try to keep the 3 minutes. I don't want to take away from anything that everybody talked about here today, her and her children in the park and them and their zones and all that. I mean, that's fine. That's important to them. So I apologize. I don't want to take that away from any of y'all, okay? But that's not what I'm here for. So I'm here because Zaki, and I'm sure everybody in the Schertz seen the video, and I am Zaki's worst critic. I'm hard on him. I'm his stepmom. And one thing he did wrong, he was scared as a young black man, getting pulled over in the neighborhood he lives in. And so he did go to his house. However, I got all kind of issues I'm concerned about. I am concerned about if this woman police officer mainly, who kept kicking him, who was kicking him when he was already down. He got tased, and several times he got tased, which is not healthy for anyone. And let me just say this, I'm sidetracked. Everybody should have a mask on. If y'all see what I see every day, y'all would wear it. When I say that, just for y'all protection, it's horrible. You do not want to be on a ventilator. You do not want to go through those things. And y'all sitting so close together. Just my concern to people, y'all should really wear y'all masks. Sidetrack. But let's go back to the issue. So these people, once KSAC got involved, they have, we're under investigation. Under investigation to me means that you're going to be removed from being policing out on the street. You're going to be removed from your current position because we need to investigate you did the right thing. But at this point in time, they're still patrolling, which is scary. And so I'm trying to figure out, where are we going to come in and say, Schertz, because we're here for Schertz, that's where we're at, is who's going to step in and say, okay, this wasn't right, yes, he did this, yes, he did that, and then you want to get on news, oh, he had a prior record. Did y'all know he had a record when he was getting beat, getting tased? Did y'all know that when they rolled up on him? Nobody knew that. And he was only 16. It wasn't nothing major. But, however, let's talk about this woman police officer who already had a lawsuit, who's already had several issues against her, but she's still on the force. She's still out there policing. And I'm so embarrassed about Allison and Rosemary, who left, but hey, that's just me. That's just me. I'm trying to figure this out. So I'm just trying to say for Zaki, like, what are y'all thoughts? Like, who's doing, nobody's doing anything. Y'all keep saying we're investigating, but nobody's investigating nothing because they're still on the street. So if you're gonna investigate means remove them from, I bet not. They remove them from that spot and you truly investigate, but that's not what's happening. And it then went viral. It's everywhere. And it's just like, what are y'all doing? And when I say he was wrong for not stopping, but it was a minor traffic, kind of not stopping at the stop sign, should have stopped, but he didn't outspeed no police because they go 100 and 120. He just rode up to his house. And if you pull guns on me and he's 18, he just want his dad. That's all. He's like, dad, that's all he wanted. Because he needed some safety, some comfort, and stuff like, if something happens to me, Dad, I need you. So if any of y'all have sons, any of y'all, whether you black, brown, purple, or blue, you should understand the fear. If your son was to knock on your door and you were asleep, bam, and dad, what would you do? and you couldn't do nothing because the police is out there holding guns on him at 18 years old. What would y'all do if it was y'all son? Don't say they wouldn't be in that situation, because they can get in that situation. I don't care how much you bring them up to be this perfect child or whatever the case you want to be. They still gonna do what they want to do when they want to do it. But what would y'all do as a dad, as a father? So I'm not understanding any of this, of like nobody's like doing nothing. Whoever this woman is, what's her name?
Megan Finesse.
Megan Finesse. She needs to be off the street until the investigation is complete.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
No, that's not enough. That's not enough. I need like all that feedback, all this feedback y'all was giving these people. Do y'all have any questions for me? Why do I feel this way? Do you have any questions like, what do you think what Zaki could have did different? Because y'all entertained this stuff for I don't know how long with this nonsense.
We're prohibited from answering questions. It's not on the agenda. We cannot comment or discuss this.
You just put me on the agenda.
Excuse me. Let me explain the process.
Put me on the agenda.
No, we put you up on the hearing the residents. There's a big difference. We must post it on the agenda and give our residents 72 hours notice.
Oh,
excuse me.
So this was a formality just to shut us up.
No, this is a hearing the residents where you can go ahead and speak.
This is what you just said. You put me on this agenda. You said sign up. Girl, cut it out. You're an embarrassment. So you didn't sit up here and said. Hold on. You put me on. Hold on. You put me on the agenda.
No, I did not.
And said we could talk.
No.
But we can talk, but you don't have nothing to say back.
You were not placed on the agenda. You were placed on the hearing the residents. Excuse me. I'm trying to explain the process.
Okay, so we'll get this process, but let me tell you this. Mayor Gutierrez, Councilman Scott, thank you, Mr. Davis, for having your mask on. So important. Michael, like really, and you, total embarrassment. You, David, y'all don't have no idea. When I say COVID is real, it has nothing to do with Republican, nothing to do with Democrat. What I'm saying is, for your own well-being, put your mask on when you're up here in front of everybody. It's an embarrassment.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not done. Will you trust and believe we will be back here next Tuesday? We will get on this agenda, and when I say y'all, what you should have did was address it tonight, but because y'all scared and because y'all don't have nothing to say, y'all don't know how to figure out to put y'all words in unless y'all have time to think about it. Well, think off your head. Like we do every day. Like our young black men and our young brown men who can't even ride up in their own neighborhood because they're getting targeted.
Okay.
So y'all think about that.
Thank you.
Oh, we're coming back. And where's this young guy?
Ms. Capri Rayford.
You get all these people with no mask on that they're not.
Ms. Capri Rayford.
But it's important. And make sure you get Allison.
Next on the hearing the residents. Next on the hearing the residents is Mr.
She just want to be on the board.
Mr. Edwin Lee.
I'm sorry. No compassion. I'm sorry.
We'll let the gentleman speak first.
I don't know why I wouldn't be able to speak for my brothers, but okay.
What's your name on the agenda?
It is.
No, listen. Get to talk.
How y'all doing? Appreciate it. So I've been looking at this sign up here, and it says in 1958 this chamber was created. And when this chamber was created, black people weren't allowed to drink out of the same water fountains as white people. So if y'all don't know why we're in here, I don't know what to tell you, including Mrs. Howard down there, or Hayward. You weren't allowed to come in here either. So if y'all want to act like you don't know what's going on, that's okay. But each and every one of y'all on this council, has heard of Black Lives Matter this year. And you can't deny that. And the difference between my generation, those of us born in the 80s, these 20-year-olds in here got time and they got energy. Your meetings ain't gonna be the same no more. It's just not gonna be comfortable no more. It's a different country that we're wanting. So I'll say this. The reason why that young man ran is because he's seen what everybody in here has seen. You can't deny that, Mayor. You've been watching the news. He's been watching his peers and boys that look like him be murdered in the streets, whether it's justified, unjustified, whatever. I'm doing something wrong and I might not go home tonight. I might not see my mom or dad again. And you can understand that. I don't care what he did wrong, right? So we got to get to the root of these problems. If he was scared because he had some weed on him, okay. Do what your sister county has done, Bexar County, do what San Antonio's done, and make the cite and release here in Schertz right now. You have the power to do that. If you got under 4 ounces, you don't go to jail anymore. You get a ticket and you get to go about your business. But because he had a little bit of weed on him, he got scared and ran home, and a whole other situation popped up. Anybody on this council smoke weed? I won't make y'all. I won't make y'all answer, but I will. Listen, we won't make them answer, but we know the answer, right? Anybody on this council have a concealed carry license? Because I know I do. And if that would have been my front door, it would have been a whole different situation. It wouldn't have been nobody getting arrested or taken. It would have been a whole different situation, and you can understand that, Mayor. So how can we stop from situations like that happening again? Make cite and release something real in Schertz, Texas, so that when situations like this pop up, we're not here at your council meetings and y'all can talk about fox trees, elephants, whatever you need to talk about, ditches, easements, whatever you need to talk about. Otherwise, we got time, and these young children have energy that we didn't have. At 20 years old, I wasn't in here doing this. They're in here doing this at 20. It's a whole different country at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Capri, Rayford.
So first and foremost, I want to thank every last one of you guys for your support for our family, because this means the world, because this is the only way things are going to change, is if we stand up and we stand together. So thank you guys very much, every last one of you guys in here. So regardless of we're not justifying sins that Key was not in the wrong. He was wrong. He should have stopped. But like everyone has stated, you guys are not blind. You don't have blinders on. You realize what is going on in America. You realize that being an 18-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid, an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, Tamir Rice, who got killed for playing with a toy gun. Like, you guys cannot be this silly and acting as if it's not like going on. You know why he did not stop. You know why he did not make that, he got somewhere safe. There is no reason why that cop, whoever he was, I can't think of the name, the guy that told my dad, who is a disabled veteran who served this country in the Desert Storm, that he is going to get it next. What is he going to get next? If there was nothing going on, there should not have been a statement like that. And for you guys to sit up here, every last one of y'all, and not hold them accountable and say, this is wrong, we have to make a stand, we have to do something. You guys are just as guilty as they are. And for you to make a statement and for you to say, he should have stopped. Besides the stop, what did your officers do wrong? This is what we're looking at. We know what he did wrong. What did your officers do wrong? They overbeat somebody. For what? For what? For what? They already had it on their mind. And for that guy to say that his body cam was off, come on now. You're telling me that he didn't turn that body cam off? He knew what was going to happen when they got to when my brother stopped at my dad's house, at his house where he lives. They are residents of Schertz. They have the right to be here. You cannot treat people like that because of the color of their skin. You guys are all wrong. And you, sis, stay woke, because you are very sleep. You need to hold your whole little place here, your whole little town here accountable for their actions. You are the mayor. You need to take action on this. You need to hold your chief of police. You need to hold your lieutenant. You need to hold those officers. Everyone in that situation needs to be held accountable, because the same way you guys are going to hold Zaki accountable for his actions, your police officers need to be held accountable for their actions. Point blank, period.
No justice! No justice! No justice!
go ahead and continue with all right.
I know I didn't sign up to speak, but this should have been a priority. This is a very small city. This video went viral. That is an 18-year-old child. Nobody sitting up here is perfect. Nobody sitting up here is perfect, period. And the fact that you can say he should have listened, that goes way beyond it. Like she said, we've seen people die, and the fact of the matter is, if y'all's pets were getting killed the way that black people were getting killed on camera, it'd be a completely different conversation. This should have been a priority, and shame on you for it not being.
All right, and let's go ahead and go with the roll call confirmation. Our City Secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide a roll call confirmation on consent agenda items 1 and 3 through 9, and discussion items number 2, 10, and 11. Ms. Dennis?
Yes. Consent agenda items 1 and 3 through 9. A motion was made by Councilmember Hayward, seconded by Councilmember Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Scott, Councilmembers Davis, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 2, resolution number 20R109. A motion was made by Councilmember Davis, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Scott. Mayor Pro Tem Scott, Councilmembers Davis, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 10, ordinance number 20S37 on first reading. A motion was made by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Dalla. Mayor Pro Tem Scott, Councilmembers Davis, Larson, Dalla, Hayward voted yes. Councilmember Scagliola voted no. Motion passed. Item number 11, ordinance number 20K35. A motion was made to approve on first reading by Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Councilmembers Davis, Larson, and Hayward voted yes. Councilmembers Dalla and Scagliola voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. We'll go ahead and continue with our workshop discussion item regarding the COVID-19 virus and our current ordinance number 20H18, our declaration of local disaster. Chief Long.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just to give a quick rundown on the COVID-19 update and numbers, and I've got our new EMC here with me as well to go over some of those numbers real quick. Just looking again at the current numbers, we're showing 23 active cases in Guadalupe County. Now in Schertz, we're showing 5 active cases. Continuing to see some numbers rise in Bexar County at 34, 54 for active cases, and Comal County's at 219 active cases. I'll turn it over to Summer.
Good evening. So as we show you each week, the case counts, the active case counts in the surrounding counties, as well as some of the larger jurisdictions around the state, do continue to increase. So we are watching those as we move through. The active cases in Comal County have gone up significantly this week compared to where they were. We were remaining pretty solid on those, but they have started to increase, so as you can see here. The 23 active has been about standard for Guadalupe County, but 215 is much higher for where we are with Comal County, so keeping an eye on that as well. Our fatality, I think the number of active cases in relationship to the number of fatalities is gone down some in this past week. And then our positivity rate still stays significantly lower than the remainder of the state. So We continue to do okay in that area in relationship to the remainder of the state. We do have some hotspot areas throughout the state that are contributing to that state positivity. The school district cases are at about 12 today. We have 8 students and 4 staff cases. Those are updated daily at 4:30, but still staying relatively low compared to the number of students on campus. The daily case count for the state, it was increasing significantly again with those hotspots in like the El Paso, Amarillo, Lubbock areas, but is starting to get a handle on some of those areas and starting to come back down. Our hospitalization rate is up, and that is something to kind of keep an eye on. That is what drives what we make recommendations on for openings and capacity. And we still have plenty of capacity for ventilations and ICU beds, but it is rising. So again, just something that we're keeping our eye on. Again, that magic number for us for hospitalization rates is to stay under 15%, and we are still well under 15%, although just notable in the past week we did rise above 5%, which is the first time that that's happened for our area. So we are continuing to monitor that as well. Any additional questions?
Okay, council, floor is open for discussion. No questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to say one thing, council. Thank you for your patience and your understanding. I know some of the comments were based on emotions. And as elected representatives, thank you for raising your level of tolerance so that we can conclude hearing the residents that we had. Thanks again. We'll continue with the workshop discussion and update on staff compression issues. Mr. Kell?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Here this evening to give an update on the staff compression issue. If you'll recall, back in August of 2020, at the pre-budget retreat, staff charged council, or excuse me, council charged staff with looking into the compression issue that existed within the city. In order to do so, we formed a cross-departmental team made up of representatives from PD, Fire, EMS, HR, the city manager's office, as well as a couple of non-public safety departments. And this team started meeting in August weekly to review the issue, evaluate the causes, and also to determine some potential solutions. So tonight, I'm just going to run through a couple of things. One, I'm going to frame the issue. I'm going to review some of the decision points that the committee discussed throughout the process, share some preliminary findings, provide potential solutions, and then ultimately what we're doing here tonight is just seeking guidance from council about how we move this forward. So the issue, compression exists between and within public safety ranks, and so what we mean when we say this is that we have subordinates making more than supervisors. Whenever we set out, we looked across the city to determine if this was occurring in other city departments, non-public safety departments, and what we determined is that it's really mainly prevalent in within public safety. Some contributing factors include a unified or single pay plan for the city, wide and overlapping pay bands, so you might recall that our current pay bands are 45% width, our merit system, and then a commitment in the recent class and comp study to maintain employee penetration in the pay range. So those are some of the things that have contributed to where we are today. The impact of compression greatly causes morale issues. You'll see employee dissatisfaction, low levels of engagement, and perhaps most important is a lack of desire to promote within the ranks in public safety. So some of the decision points that we discussed whenever when the committee convened was, did we think it was appropriate for public safety to have a separate pay plan than the rest of the city? We evaluated benchmark cities, and we saw that this really is a standard across benchmark cities to have their own. So we said yes. We thought that they should have their own pay table or pay plan. And then we delved down even deeper and said, is it appropriate for PD, fire, and EMS to each have their own pay plan? Again, we looked at what our benchmarks were doing. We also evaluated operational needs of a department, or these departments in particular. We looked at their pay practices, their rank structures, all which differ. So again, appropriate for each of the departments to have their own. We looked at narrowing the pay bands, and again, in accordance with industry standards, and we said, yes, we think this is one way where we can help to address the compression issue. We looked at the bandwidth. We looked at the overlap between pay bands. Again, remember, these are all reasons or factors that we identified as contributing to the issue. So we started talking about different types of pay models that might be appropriate to address the issue. We looked at time and grade systems, so this would include an automatic salary increase after a time requirement is satisfied. We also briefly considered a milestone-based system, so this would be one in which increases would happen upon achievement of a particular goal or objective. Ultimately, the current model under consideration includes a time and grade system. We had a lot of discussion, but arrived at the conclusion that the time and grade would be based on tenure in the rank within the city of Schertz. And with this model that's under consideration, there would be a change in the merit program. And that would be that we would start offering a lump sum merit in lieu of a permanent salary increase. So with that, what you see on your screen here is a sample model. These are generic. Really what I want to focus on is the design of the model, the different points of the model, and what it offers. So what you see before you are several ranks, and you see here many of the decision points that we discussed whenever we were talking about development of a model. We talked about at what intervals would an increase occur, after how much time and grade would that pay bandwidth be. And so again, you can see here, again, this is a generic model, but it paints a picture of what ultimately the direction, and generally speaking, what we think might be an effective solution for this issue. We also acknowledge that solutions may require a paradigm shift in terms of our city culture, and specifically, a model. We know there won't be a perfect solution, but we're trying to do the best we can for the most amount of people. We know concessions will be required, and really to address the compression, what we believe needs to be done is narrow the pay bands and reduce the overlap in pay bands between the ranks. So as I mentioned, we had representatives from each of the public safety departments as well as non-public safety departments. What you have on the screen before you shows the consensus, and the not being supported is mainly because of the reduced earning potential that you would see with this model. Again, what we're proposing is that to effectively address compression, we have to narrow the pay bands. And when we do that, we're effectively reducing earning potential. So that really is the main concern with the folks who don't support this model as proposed. So again, next steps, we're really just here seeking direction from council. If, just kind of a temperature gauge, if you think we're on the right track to addressing this, we'd just like to hear from y'all. If you think we're moving in the right direction, we will go back, firm up the model, and then return with a proposal. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Council, floor's open for discussion. Councilmember Hayward.
The police department, what is their biggest concern about this model?
So first, I think it's important to note that for both the fire and the police department, we had representatives from the association, so the fire association, the police association, as well as representatives who are not affiliated with the associations. And so for the police department in particular, both the association and non-association are not in support of this model. And again, it is because they are concerned about the reduction in earning potential moving forward. They're also concerned about employees maxing out quicker and then being frozen. Those were really the top concerns that we heard.
Oh, so just to elaborate on that a little bit, by closing or, by compressing the bands, what we're saying is that people will, if they remain in the same rank, they will exceed the pay range in that band, and therefore they in theory, would not be eligible for further raises. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir, you did. I think to your point, Dr. Brown, the model is designed to incentivize employees to promote. Right, so that's really what we are encouraging with a model like this is promotion up through the ranks.
So basically, it's like a military pay scale. They don't expect for you to be in a certain rank for, let's say, 10 years in one rank, or, they don't expect for you to be at a particular rank for a long period of time. They are anticipating that you will promote within and move up so that you can make more money. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And to elaborate on your point, at year 15, they would cap out, right? So to increase your earning potential, then you need to promote. That's the challenge there. Part of the concern was, as you see the widths there, is the loss in the earning potential, but we also have to consider the increase in earning potential in the early years, which was where we were focused both on the previous class and comp and this one, was to make sure that the lower ends were compensated appropriately and bringing them closer to the market. So, yes, they lose some on the top end, but they're also gaining on the bottom end, which is some of the concern.
Is that including, like, I guess, if they get certificates for different things, is that included in this, or is that a
No, ma'am, this is base pay. We
Just
wanted
base
to
pay,
start
okay.
with base pay, and then once we finish this, we'll come back with incentive pay program, so that we're...
Okay. Dr. Scagliola.
Yeah, if you would, who exactly is in the green, the yellow, blue, and orange pay scales? Are those officer ranks?
So it could be, now this is a generic model, but if you wanted to apply that, it would be officer, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant. It could be firefighter, FAO, lieutenant. So, yes, and this is simple. We have drafted models for all three departments. As we said, we have similar, because they have different rank structures. They have different hours that they work based on pay and 2196, 2080. I mean, there's a number of variations. So we developed a model that's consistently applied through all public safety, but there'll be different variations for fire, for PD, and EMS.
Okay.
Yep, the 3.25%, it could be 2.75%. The overlap could be 2125. In this case, it could be 2500. So it's because you make one change, it affects the entire model, and so you have to be consistent, as well as market. We pay attention to the market rate where we're at, 'cause
Right.
we're so far below that. So yes.
So when do we go from hourly pay to salary pay? At what color?
I'm sorry, sir. This is just an illustration. Right, we haven't moved away from hourly employees. Non-exempt employees are still paid hourly.
I still get I see a concern with like a rank 2, individual making 75,000 and then pulling a lot of overtime. You could theoretically, make well into 80s or
Yes, sir, that would be...
with the overtime. So that really doesn't fix the compression type problem that we're looking at.
So we would be addressing compression, because if you look, so let's say you had a 15-year individual in rank 2, whatever it is, let's call it corporal for now. So yeah, you might have them making 75 plus overtime. But if you look, the next rank, there's only a small overlap of approximately $2,100 between the top end of a corporal and the bottom end of a sergeant, right?
Okay, so how does this incentivize somebody to want to get promoted? If I go from an hourly pay scale where I can pull in a lot of overtime versus being an officer, well, I'm on a salary now
Yes,
without overtime pay. I don't see how it fixes that concern.
So in this model, and pretty much with all the rank structures, without talking too much specific, these ranks are going to be non-exempt until you get up to, like, say, in the police department, a lieutenant is the rank at which they become exempt and no longer eligible. But we have built that into the model. So if you'll take a look at rank 4, you'll notice that there's no overlap between rank 3 and rank 4.
Okay.
And that's designed to account for any potential overtime that they might lose going into an exempt position. So we are taking those types of things into consideration when building out the model.
Okay, good. And the other thing is with the merit pay. Theoretically, if somebody is rank 2 at the 15 years, 75,000, program comes along and, hey, you know, sorry about that. You're not getting, even though you deserve it, you're not going to get it. So how are we going to restructure that merit pay program so that, one suggestion would be a lump sum payment as opposed to a scale increase.
Right.
What is your plan for that?
So, as you mentioned, current merit program across the city includes a permanent salary increase. What we propose with this model, and might I add that has really been a function of giving employees a vehicle to move through ranks or to move through pay bands, because we don't have any other way for employees to receive increases. But with this model, we're proposing a vehicle. Again, it's a time and grade system, so they have a way to move through the rank. And so with that, we're proposing just the lump sum merit rather than the permanent salary increase. So the individual who is maxed out within their range would still be eligible to receive the lump sum merit.
Yeah, I really do have to thank you for all the time and effort you put into this. Not easy, okay? It's like, you know, juggling one or two tennis balls at a time is easy. When you get 3, it gets a little more challenging. Well, we threw a half dozen at you simultaneously, and you managed to come up with a plan that looks good. You don't have complete consensus from what I noticed, but a good luck ever trying to get complete consensus on anything. Job well done. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Councilmember Dalla.
If I may, I just want to mention, and some of them were here earlier, and I think some are still here, but as I mentioned, this was a group effort. We had a lot of folks who helped out, who gave us time each week, so just wanted to thank them as well. Absolutely. Let's see who's here. April Tolman with the library. Clint Williams, BC with the fire department. Let me just name them, even though I don't see anybody else in here. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see Mitch. Weston with the police department. Richard Kuntz. Oh, right there. Yes, I'm sorry, guys. Richard Kuntz with the police department. I'm sorry? Yeah. And then Tony McFalls was here earlier. He was sitting in the back with me. He was graciously helped out and was a great help, a voice of reason. And then also, I'm sorry, yeah, Brian Salge was also here earlier. He is a field training officer in our EMS department. And then, thank you, Tom Hollick, who started out with us, but Tom deployed out to California early on, so he was absent for the middle part, but again, he represented the Fire Association. So again, we really appreciate everybody's.
And I'll say, not only, we didn't get complete consensus, but everybody worked really hard. I mean, I really appreciate the team. You know, you all gave it an honest effort, and at the end of the day, there's some difference of opinion, and we may have to work through that, but really do appreciate all the great effort and the positive effort, and it seemed to be a very positive, team-oriented effort, so thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dalla.
First, let me say thank you to all of our first responders, the police, fire, EMS, everybody. You guys do a job that's becoming more and more challenging every year, and I definitely appreciate it. And from my perspective, I don't know that we could pay you guys enough to do what you do, but you know, it is what it is. We also have to be financially responsible with the taxpayers' money. I guess first question on this, assuming that this was implemented as we're looking at, is there anybody that's going to see a reduction in pay?
No, sir.
Okay, so nobody is negatively impacted by this?
Nobody will see a reduction in pay, and there's going to be a reduction in the earning potential for people, but nobody will see a reduction in their current pay.
Okay. I mean, it looks like a good plan. Obviously, a lot of it's unfortunate that we don't have a full consensus on it, but I think that we're moving in the right direction, and I would encourage you guys to continue trying to see if we can find a solution.
Okay, Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, again, thank you for all the work on the staff on the HR side for looking at this. Thanks to all the folks that are impacted by it. I do want to note that this is on the agenda for just an update and not for action. I would request that the slides that we just saw right here, because you're asking for input from the staff or from the council going forward. And I think at some point we're going to have a lot of discussions about things like the salary structure, cost of livings, merit, and things like that. I would ask that if you could please send these slides out to us so we can review them. This is a lot more than what we had in the packet. I would like to dig a little bit deeper into this and see if I have any other questions before I give any kind of advice going forward or recommendations.
Yes, sir, we will, and we've got more information. We just want to make sure we were on the right course, that the council wanted us to continue to look at this compensation philosophy, this type of model, addressing compression this way. If you didn't want to go, we'd want to continue with the group's efforts this direction, but we can definitely share that.
Just off the top, I mean, I have a question here. So if let's say we call this patrolman corporal, going from rank 1 to rank 2. So if I have a fast burner patrolman who's with us for 6 years and he's making $58K a year, and he gets selected for promotion to corporal, he starts off at what? Is it based on his years now, or is it based on his years with the city, or is it, so does he step in, if he's a 8-year patrolman at $58K, does he go to a 8-year now corporal, which is somewhere between step 4 and 5 at $68K? So how does that promotion work out?
So if he's at, let's say, step 4 is a 6-year, will get promoted, or she gets promoted, it would go to a step 1, or well, first there's the 4%, which is.
So go to a step 1?
You'd go to step 1 in that grade.
So I mean, and that's one of my potential current concerns with going forward. If he's a step 8 patrolman at $58K a year, and he gets promoted to corporal, and now he goes to a step 1 corporal at $61, that's a pay increase for him. But on the same token, what do we do if we've got a step 7 15-year patrolman who, for whatever reason, now becomes a corporal after 15 years in the city? That starting pay band is 61, so we're not going to reduce his pay, so we start him at a step 3, almost a step 3.
So we would take the 64,000, and there's a 4% minimum promotion. So let's say it's 68. My public math is terrible. It would go to a step 4.
Yeah, I'm just want to make sure that as we go forward, and we see the same thing on the GS world, going from a GS whatever, a GS 12 to a GS 13. There's issues of things like retained pay, and there's the ability to negotiate what step you're going to based on that promotion, stuff like that. I just want to make sure that we've got this pretty well locked down so that we can explain to folks that, you know, hey, I just got promoted from patrolman to corporal, and he just got promoted to patrolman to corporal. He's getting paid $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 more dollars a year than I am. I just want to make sure that we've looked at all those connections, and we have this pretty well messed up. So like I said, I'd like to see the slide deck here so I can go through and make sure I have any other questions.
We'll finish the models out, and then we'll go employee by employee in with the group in confidence and kind of work through those to make sure that we address every individual need and kind of go through that career development, just like you're asking.
Sure. I could also add on to that a couple things. One, I want to mention that we did have a discussion with the group about years in grade versus years of service, and I think that's kind of the point that you're making here. or part of it. And so we did discuss at length with the group, like I said, the difference and how that impacts the model. Ultimately, this model obviously is dependent upon years and grade. As Mr. Kell mentioned, there is a minimum requirement for promotion. But I think it's important to note that this model, though a step model, doesn't rule out the ability to negotiate starting pay. So I think that's an important piece when we look at hiring folks. So let's say, for instance, we're hiring an officer from another department who has experience, but here, this model is based again on years in rank and Schertz. Now, if we're hiring a 5-year officer from New Braunfels, we're not going to bring them in at a step 1 officer, even though they don't have any years here in the city. So again, it still does offer flexibility to negotiate starting salary, and I would say that would extend to even negotiating promotional salaries as well.
Let me run this scenario by you. Say I'm a corporal, step 2, making $63,983. You hire a new corporal because of his experience, and you place him at step 3, and you're paying him $66. He will not get a raise until he reaches 5 years' time in grade, from what I understand. So me, as a corporal, will actually pass him on his pay because I have more years in service in that grade. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. There definitely could be scenarios where, yes, if you come into a higher rank, that you wouldn't see an increase for a number of years if you came in at a higher grade than was actually your years of service, or excuse me, I should say a higher step than your actual years of service.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any other questions? I think, you're in the right direction. I mean, I looked at the pay scale. I looked at all the different scenarios, and I just want to make sure I got that clarification on that particular scenario. But I appreciate all the work that you have done. It is quite a bit of work, and sensitive too.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Jessica and Charles, who have, been the leaders of this whole thing. So thank you. They put countless hours. I can't even tell you how many hours they put in, and brain cells that they've destroyed over the course of this. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a closed session. Item number 14. The City Council will meet in closed session in accordance with Section 551.087 of the Texas Governmental Code, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations, closed meeting. The governmental body is not required to conduct an open meeting, 1, to discuss or deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that a governmental body has received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have, locate, stay, or expand in or near the territory of the governmental body, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations. Or item number 2, to deliberate the offer of financial or other incentives to a business prospect. This is in reference to Economic Development Project E-064. Again, due to social distancing rules, those not participating are required to step outside the building. We will call you back when we reconvene. The time is now 8:53. We stand in recess. Well, we will reconvene after our discussion. How are we going to handle that next week?
Oh, man, you guys.
What?
We have
A Monday meeting.
I would have answered the question. No, I've never smoked weed.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think.
This one? Oh, the yellow sheet.
I'm all for the decriminalization.
Yeah.
If it's for personal use, I don't have a problem with that. If you're distributing or selling it, that's different.
We're going to have
got
another,
an ounce or whatever.
when they're doing the special sessions.
We throw too many people in general in jail, and a disproportionately amount of minorities in jail for stupid shit.
I think he said we never commented on it.
Exactly. But no, I can say, shit, they still have me peeing in a bottle like every 3 months because of my security clearance. So no, I don't smoke weed. I like all the money they throw at me. I don't want to risk losing that.
It's now 9:44. We reconvene into a regular session after our discussion and deliberation regarding the closed session in reference to agenda item number 14 in regards to the Economic Development Project E064. Is there action on the floor?
Mr. Mayor, I move to provide authority to the city manager to negotiate an agreement with Union Pacific to secure the opening of a new public railroad crossing based on the closure of an existing public railroad crossing, given clear delineation of traffic counts and geography acceptable to UP, timing to public crossings opened by UP based on public crossings closure by the city of Schertz, and that the impact of closure options identified can be reasonably balanced by the positive value and impact of associated industrial development that can be expected by a new public crossing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Dalla, second by Councilmember Hayward. Any other comments? If not, let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, we have 5 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right, Ms. Dennis, we need a roll call confirmation.
Sure. Councilmember Dalla made a motion that he just said, because I don't have it, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Do you want to repeat that motion?
Sure. I move to provide authority to the city manager to negotiate an agreement with Union Pacific to secure the opening of a new public railroad crossing based on the closure of an existing public railroad crossing, given clear delineation of traffic counts and geography acceptable to UP, timing to public crossings opening by UP based on public crossings closure by the city of Schertz, and that the impact of closure options identified can be reasonably balanced by the positive value and impact of associated industrial development that can be expected by a new public crossing.
And it was seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Councilmembers Davis, Larson, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Ennis. Let's go ahead and continue with the information packets available to City Council and available for public viewing on our website, Schertz.com. Item number 15, the monthly update on major projects in progress and capital improvement projects. And item number 16, Schertz Economic Development Corporation performance agreement payments. So we'll continue with requests and announcements. Announcements by our city manager, Dr. Brown. Okay. Council, any updates or any information you're requesting from staff? If not, okay. Council, is there any possible items you'd like to place on the future agenda items? Okay, I hear none. We'll continue. Announcements by council members or events they attended. Councilmember Davis?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did have the opportunity of attending the Schertz Housing Authority meeting last night. That's it.
Councilmember Larson?
Nothing.
Councilmember Dalla?
Just a couple things. First of all, let me offer my condolences to Mr. Welch's family. Sincere condolences from myself and my family. Attended the CVLGC meeting back on the 29th, and also last week a ribbon cutting for the Tropical Smoothie Cafe and for Ideal Feet with the Chamber. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Scagliola?
Nada.
Councilmember Hayward?
Yes, a few things. I did the Senior Center Halloween costume contest, the Text 21 TxDOT quarterly meeting. It was a Zoom call. I did the ribbon cuttings at Tropical Smoothie and Ideal Feet. I did the animal shelter advisory meeting, and the I think that's all.
Okay. I just want to say that we have a special session next week on Monday, November 16th at 6 p.m. Please join us to say farewell to Councilmember Scott Larson and welcome our new Councilmember Jill Whitaker. It is now 9:47. We stand adjourned.